Yes, I can see people's auras. And I hate saying it so bluntly. It makes me sound like some hack psychic who fakes the ability as a means of exploitation and a paycheck. I've never made money from my ability. I've never taken advantage of it, and until now, I've never spoken of it to anybody. But I really do see them, and I'm starting to view it as more of a curse. I have a reason for typing this out, and I assure you, there isn't a happy ending. For me, it's quite simple. I see a faint light surrounding people, everyone, and in that light, I can see their morality. The brighter and more translucent the light is, the better the person. The darker and opaquer, the worse. Dim and partly translucent are morally ambiguous. To simplify things, those are three ways that I describe them. Dark equals evil, bright equals good, dim equals somewhere in between. It's strange. I've always viewed the people with gray, dim auras as arbiters, mediators, the people in between who aren't one or the other and will always have difficult decisions to make. I was a child when I first became aware of my gift. It didn't take long to figure out that the brighter auras were kinder to me and selfless. While both of my parents are good people, my father's aura was quite a bit brighter than my mother's. As a result, he was always far more patient and understanding with me. It was clear to see that my teachers and fellow students with brighter auras were usually friendlier and more compassionate. The dark auras were the stereotypical fighters, lunch money stealers, and bullies. I would say I was around 8 years old when I fully figured out that I have a gift that most people don't have, that possibly nobody else has. I've read some of the, quote, new age websites and alternative medicine articles that give their take on aura reading. While I believe that the vast majority of it is BS, I expect there must be at least some other people out there with my ability. So I don't want to completely diminish those people as an outright hoax. It's just that, for me, it doesn't work anything like the way those websites describe. I've visited numerous aura readers and psychics. Most of them have dim or dark auras themselves, and I'm certain they don't really hold this power. I'm not saying all psychics are terrible people. I visited a few who had very bright auras. They were unable to convince me that they really have psychic powers, but they, at the very least, use their deception to try and help people. You need to understand, I'm going to end this entry by sharing a terrifying event that is happening to me. But before I get to that, I think there are a few more things I need to explain. I imagine many of you are curious as to what type of aura is the most common. I'm happy to tell you that the majority of people are somewhere between bright and dim. I see very few dark auras. This isn't scientific, and I hadn't traveled the world plotting out charts and graphs, but I'd estimate around 60% of people are brightish, around 25 dimish, leaving just around 15% darkish. Again, these are just estimates. What's the precise difference between, say, bright and dim? I have no idea. But rest assured, there is far more bright in the world than there is dark. The next thing I'd like to discuss is children. I can see a person's aura right from birth, and I've never encountered an aura changing as someone ages. I'm not sure what this means for the whole nature versus nurture debate, and I'm not saying that everyone with a dark aura always behaves terribly or vice versa. A person with a bright aura might be born in horrible conditions, acquire a drug problem, and then resort to thievery to feed their addiction. I think the difference is this. A bright aura thief with a horrible upbringing may rob someone, but they would never intentionally hurt someone in the process. A dark aura thief would kill someone if they could get away with it without even a second thought. Another interesting note. I find the ratio between bright, dim, dark to be similar pretty much across all human interactions. Whether I'm at a church or a death metal concert, it always seems to be around the same, 60, 25, 15. I once visited a federal prison and was shocked to see that at least half of the prisoners had bright auras. I had to be at that prison in person to see this because I can't see auras on photographs, television shows, movies, or even in mirrors. I can only see auras in the real world. Another strange thing. I can't see my own aura. I assume and hope it will be on the brighter spectrum, but I can't see it. The brightest person I ever saw worked as a social worker. She shone so bright that it was difficult for me to even look at her. Based on the way people acted in her presence, I think that almost everyone around her could sense her brightness in a subconscious way. Everyone loved her. She had donated a kidney to someone she barely even knew. She had a special needs adopted child. Most of the money she earned was donated to various charities, and that's only the little I knew of her. This woman shined so brightly that she scared me. It was scary that someone could be so good. But it wasn't nearly as scary as the darkest person I ever saw. I was 20 years old at the time, leaving a club downtown at 2 a.m. A man quietly walked down the street. I didn't see him at first, but I noticed the light dimming around me. The man was so dark that he partly absorbed the light around him. I looked at him long and hard. He looked desperate, cruel, and callous. When he looked up and locked eyes with me, it made me fall back. He smirked, as though he knew what I could see. I saw his face up close. I would never forget it, and I recognized it when I saw his mugshot a few weeks later in the newspaper. He had murdered his ex-wife and 2 children in cold blood. I think I need to get to it now, the reason why I'm writing this all out. I fell in love a year ago. She didn't shine anywhere near as bright as what I've seen before, but most assuredly wasn't dark or even dim. She was beautiful. Her sense of humor, her wit, her everything. She was my dream woman. And I've never told her about anything at all about the auras I see. I could go into far more about her, but this isn't a love story. What's important is this. We fell in love. She got pregnant. We got married. We were happy. We were so happy. I remember hearing the buzz of my phone 2 mornings ago. I remember my excitement when I saw, "It's happening. Come to the hospital." I remember my frustration when I got stuck in traffic. I remember how long it took to find a parking spot. I remember shouting at a nurse, "What room is my wife in?" I remember bursting through a door and seeing the smile on my wife's face. I remember seeing the doctor, his light shining so bright as he told me, "Congratulations, it's a boy." The doctor held him up to me, and all the light in the room dissipated. No, this can't be, I remember saying. The doctor put him in my arms. The darkness around my son was so absolute that I could barely even see him. He was a void. He was so dark that the world barely even existed around him. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced. I started weeping. I think my wife and the doctor thought that they were tears of joy, but they weren't. Lord knows they weren't. I think back to the dark outline around that man that murdered his family. It was up to that point the darkest I'd ever seen. But the darkness around my son was 100 times worse, 1,000 times worse. And what could possibly be 1,000 times worse than murdering your entire family? It's been 2 days now. We're home now. My son's darkness is so extreme that it dims the hallway leading to his room. My wife knows something is wrong. I think she suspects I'm having regrets about having children at all. If only she knew. What do I do? He's my son. Just 20 minutes ago I stood above him, holding a pillow over his face, but I couldn't do it. Not yet, anyway. A man who could murder his 2-day-old baby boy? What color would his aura be? And here's the thought that keeps going through my mind as I sit here alone. The fathers of our worst, the Adolf Hitlers, the Joseph Stalins, the Timothy McVeighs, If their parents knew what they would become, would they murder them in their cradle? If they have the strength to hold down the pillow as long as it takes? I can see the door of my son's room from my office. The hallway seems to be growing darker. I look down at my hands as I type this. Maybe I'm going crazy. But there seems to be an aura around my hands and arms now. It's gray. It's dim. Maybe it's always been dim. I'm looking down at the pillow beside me. The grayish, dim outline around my hands, more apparent than ever. Maybe it's time. Maybe this is why I have this gift. It all comes down to right now. Maybe it's time. I think it's time.